Hey guys, what's going on? And welcome to today's video for Legends of Runeterra. Today we're continuing spoiler season for the upcoming set, Magic Misadventures, the second in the Vandal City sets, if you will. Today, unlike yesterday, no new champion. A little sad. Um, it's a Targon day, in fact. Lots of Targon cards. None of them are multi-region, I believe. So, yeah, I know a lot of people out there hate Targon. A lot of people, like myself, love Targon. But the biggest thing to talk about today is besides the new cards, we also have a new keyword. So while we don't have a new champion, like no Kennen or anything like yesterday, we do have a lot to talk about because this new keyword, in my opinion, is pretty scary. Scary as in, like, it looks strong and powerful. So before we look at all the cards, let's just look at the keyword itself and an example of the keyword. So the new keyword is called Fated, and here we have an example of a very simple Fated card, Saga Seeker. 1 mana, 1/2, Fated. That's it. Mono Targon, or just a Targon card, no multi-region. So what does Fated do? The first time each round an ally card targets me, grant me +1/+1. This, in my opinion, is a very strong keyword, especially in Targon, because Targon is one of the best regions at self-protection, if that makes sense. Self-healing, just look at Soraka, for example, Guiding Touch, Pale Cascade. I'm not saying Soraka will trigger Fated, I'm just saying Soraka helps to protect the units. But yeah, notice it says first time an ally card, not an ally spell. So if I'm reading this correctly, and a lot of other people are seeing it the same way, cards that are units that target allied cards should, in theory, trigger Fated. So what are some good cards that target your own cards? Right now, for example, one of the most played Demacia cards, Bright Steel Protector, the 2 mana 3/2 that says when it comes down, target an allied thing to give it barrier for the turn. I think Fortune Croaker would probably trigger Fated too. It's pretty cute. Another quick thing. Fated can only be used once a round, once a turn, but it's not a one and done kind of thing. Sure, it can only be done once a turn, but it's not a limit. It's like you can keep doing it. Like turn 1, trigger Fated. Turn 2, trigger Fated. Turn 3, turn 4, so on and so forth. So Saga Seeker, a little boring, little vanilla here in all honesty, but this guy can get scary really quickly. Now here's the problem. How many Fated triggers and how easy is it to activate Fated every turn? How many Fated units do you want? How many ways do you want to activate Fated? Now here's the thing though. I feel like a lot of cards that you're going to be using to trigger Fated are just going to be generally good cards. For example, Pale Cascade, Guiding Touch, Bright Steel Protector, etc., etc. But yeah, great keyword, very strong, more of a mid-rangey keyword in my opinion, but you can use it with some stronger, more dirtily control-y strategies to make really big, scary walls, blockers, if you will. And you know what deck loves big health units? Tom Kench Soraka. And it's a Targon deck. So, enough about the keyword. Let's go actually look at the cards, because we only have one page of cards to look at today. 5 cards. And I'll be honest with you, I think every single card here is playable to an extent in the meta. Maybe not in this meta, but I think these are all meta playable in terms of strength in a vacuum. Also, depending on the Targon champ, I believe it's probably going to be, looking at these cards, it will probably be Pantheon if I had to guess. I doubt it's going to be Yuumi. If Pantheon is very strong and very tied to Fated, or helps you trigger Fated that much easier, then these cards are going to be really scary. So let's look at the first one. We already saw it, Saga Seeker. I pretty much said everything about it already. 1 mana, 1/2, kind of similar to things like Bakai Reaper, Bark Beast, stuff like that. The 1 mana 1/2 Yordle in Bilgewater. Pretty good card though. Greatest thing about this card, in my opinion, is 1-drops that cannot get pinged are pretty strong, in my opinion. Sure, it doesn't really do much if it sits in the backline. This is a card that wants to be in combat, not necessarily attacking, but at the very least blocking. Also, another good example of cards that activate Fated that are just good cards. All the combat tricks, or most of the combat tricks, Troll Chance, Sharp Sights, Twin Disciplines, etc., etc. But yeah, Saga Seeker, depending on just how often you can trigger Fated, seems like a very good early start. Little weak in the late game and even in the mid game. Takes a while to get this guy going. You can't get multiple Fated triggers per turn unless there's a card that says like you can get multiple Fated triggers per turn. Who knows? We might get something like that. You know, kind of like how Ravoon makes it day all the time. But yeah, I like this card. Could see it in a Zoe deck as like an extra 1-drop besides Zoe. Plus Zoe, creating super cool star charts and I guess Spacey Sketchers and invokes in general, can give you Moonglow, and Moonglow, I hope that's a card I'm thinking of, the, you know, the 2-mana give your thing spell shield. It's either that or Moon Silver. Pretty good way to activate Fated too, so pretty nice card. Next up, Eula. I have no idea how to pronounce her name, but I've been saying Eula and no one's really gotten mad at me yet. 3 mana 3/3. Play the card, give an ally spell shield, and overwhelm this round. So, you know, like the Bright Seal Protectors and other things that just, you know, you play it, target something to give it some kind of benefit. Obviously here to be like, hey, check it out, you can use creatures besides, you don't have to just use spells to activate Fated. As for the Eula herself, pretty nice card. I really like this card. Sure, Overwhelm for 1 turn and Spell Shield for 1 turn. It's not that special. And the stat line of Eula's nothing to write home about. 3 mana 3/3 is just fine in all honesty. But here's the thing. Lee Sin. I've seen a lot of people say like, yeah, this card's insane in Lee Sin. This card's not playable in Lee Sin. I think it's like fine as a spicy one of to get around like counter spells or something. Maybe play it as like the 4th Zenith Blade. In other words, I think if you do want to play this card in Lee Sin, you will play it on the turn you try to OTK with Lee Sin. So you can, you know, get Spell Shield. I will say this though, because it's a creature, not a spell, it's not really activating Lee Sin and giving him a challenger, and Bastion just feels a little bit better in all honesty, but I can see this card getting played. Also in Dragon seems like it would like this as a one of, because even though there's Dragon's Clutch, this card just seems as a nice like mid-game bridge into that late game of like Eclipse Dragons, Aurelion Souls into your Dragon's Clutch. You use this, you put it on like a Screeching Dragon, or maybe a Shyvana, forcing your opponent to block and getting in a little chip damage to make your opponent a little more scared with their plays. And the next card. This card I love. I've been hyping this card up so much. I might be overrating this card. Blinded Mystic. 4 mana 3/2. I've seen some people look at just the stat line alone and be like, wow, that's a terrible stat line. First off, Fangs, before it got nerfed. But 4 mana 3/2, play the card, grant an ally +1/+1, and silence an enemy follower. So, let me tell you why I think this card is great. First off, it's not really a 3/2, it's more of a 4/3, which for a 4-drop is great. And as we know from card games already, from this card game and other card games, spreading out stats is pretty good. Not just balling all of your stats into one big unit that can get hit by like a Vengeance or a Minimorph is great. Being able to spread those stats around to help, you know, shore up the weaker units like Zoe's, or put them on things that would love more stats like Challengers is a great card. For example, turn 3, Laurent Protege, the 2/4 Challenger in Demacia. Into turn 4, Blinded Mystic. You now have a 3/5 Challenger, and you silence something too. If your opponent has anything. If your opponent has nothing to silence, you're probably in a good spot anyway. And then I've seen other people say, well, you can't silence champions. I'm like, sure. You know what card this is? Equinox. This card is silence an enemy follower is literally Equinox. And here's the other thing. This is an Equinox you cannot react to. This is burst speed Equinox. You will play Blinded Mystic. It's not a skill. Its ability is not a skill. You cannot deny this. You can't play cards before the Mystic's ability goes off. It comes down, it buffs something, it silences something. Now, I've seen some people say, okay, that's cool, streamer. What is there to silence in the meta? I will admit, this meta, not that many things to silence. A lot of the scarier things are champions, you know, like Poppies, Gangplanks, and Sejuani's. Still, though, there are still good cards to silence. Crackshot Corsair. What else? Greenglade Duo. Just elusives in general, like Shadow Assassin. Pretty good thing to silence. Big things with Overwhelm, like a freshly popped out Turbo Thrall, or just a Frozen Thrall, really. I'm trying to think of other things. The Fearsome, the Twin Blade from Draven Scion, or just the Fearsomes in general in that deck, or any quick attack units too. Pretty good things to silence. So I really like this card. It is a little slow, I will admit. 4 mana is kind of slow in this meta. And I feel like to get the maximum amount of value, you need to silence something really good, or at the very least half decent, and buff something as well that's pretty good to buff. But still, we've seen from Poppy just how good a +1/+1 buff can be. Sure, this is no Poppy. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is as strong as Poppy, but giving +1/+1 to a unit, even just mediocre units like Otterpuss, is a pretty solid effect. So I just like this card a lot. I think this card is great. I could honestly see this card getting nerfed in the future. But I could also see, on the other hand, this card being a little just too slow and too clunky to see play in the meta. Now the next card. The next card that fills people up with hope and a lot of dreams for dragons. Wounded White Flame. 3 mana 2/4 dragon. It has Fury and it has Fated. Actually, the only other Fated card here. There's only 2 Fated cards. I just realized that, this and Saga Seeker. This card is pretty great in my opinion. Dragons kind of struggles in the early game. Their early game's a little clunky and awkward. Sure, they have things like Ruined Dragon Guard, the Lieutenant, Dragon Chows, but it's a little clunky. So having this is nice, and Fated is really, really good. So if you're in like just, you know, a standard Demacia Targon Dragons, you have single combat to activate Fated, Sharp Sight to activate Fated, Concerted Strike. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's Strifing Strike, the 3 mana dragon single combat. You know, it comes from Shyvana when you level up Shyvana and attack, or you could just play that card in your deck anyway. You could even play Pale Cascade, Guiding Touch, Star Shapings, Judgments as well to activate Fated for this card. So I really, really like this card. Another thing I've noticed that I've seen only a few people talking about, this card doesn't kill Dragon Chow. Dragon Chow says when you summon a dragon, the dragon strikes the Chow. It doesn't kill the Chow. It just so happens that pretty much every, well, in fact, every dragon is big enough to kill Dragon Chow. Without any kind of weird shenanigans going on, Wounded White Flame is not going to kill Dragon Chow. It will strike the Chow, leave it as a 0/1, and you will still draw the card. Now, granted, it will not trigger Fury, which kind of sucks, but the cool thing is, the hypothetical turn for dragons. Turn 1 Chow. Turn 2, like the 3/2 Challenger. Dragon Guard Lieutenant, I always forget his name. Or maybe just bank the mana to bluff Pale Cascade or Sharpsight or whatever. Turn 3, Wounded White Flame. Strikes the Chow, you draw a card, you're left behind with a 0/1 Chow and the 2/4 White Flame. And if you bang 2 mana, your opponent might be scared now because you're representing Sharpsight. So you can use that injured Chow to block if your opponent's a very aggressive deck. You have a 2/4 for 3 mana, 4 health for a 3-drop is insanely high amounts of health. And then on turn 4, you can play Shyvana to kill off that little Chow, what's left of the Chow, and just go from there. So great, great card. Love this card. Another thing I haven't seen, I've only seen like a couple of people talk about it too outside of dragons. I do think this card actually can go outside of dragons. Tom Raka. Tom Raka, I think, can really use this card. High health, it grows a lot with between Fury and Fated. It really, really gets a lot bigger. Tom Raka has a lot of self-targeting spells, so I really, really like this card in Tom Raka. It will make a big wall for you as well to buy more and more time for your Star Springs or whatever you want to do. Just be careful of Scorched Earth, of course. But yeah, I love this card in Tom Rocca as well. Not the biggest Tom Rocca player myself, but I think it's pretty solid. And now the last card. We Stand Together. I've seen some people actually say it's possibly a reference to, I believe the card is United We Stand from Yu-Gi-Oh! And I know that card. I can see the reference because, you know, they're very similar art. Yeah, the artwork is very similar. Card effects are completely different, but whatever. As for this card itself, though, pretty good card. Pretty good card. I've seen some people saying it's not that good. It's like a more expensive Brothers Bond. And I'm just like, well, look here. Let me tell you why you're wrong. First off, Brothers Bond used to be playable, and then aggro just kept getting more and more aggressive tools, so they cut Brothers Bond. This is not an aggressive card. This is a more defensive / mid-rangey card. This is think of this less as a Brothers Bond and more of a Troll Chant. Sure, it's 3 mana. I will admit that. 3 mana, kind of a lot of mana for a combat trick. Good example, Twin Disciplines. When it was 3 mana, it saw a little play, like a very fringe amount of play, more play back earlier on, but nowadays, and then later on it didn't get that much play and it kind of just started to fall off. And then they buffed it to 2 mana and now it's everywhere, right? And now it's extremely annoying. This card, for 1 extra mana, so let's count the stats we're getting here. So we're giving 2 allies +1/+2. So that's 6 stats for 3 mana. From the stats alone for the cost, that's pretty good. Unleashed Power. I think that's the card's name. I believe it's Shurima card. The one that says give a unit +2/+1, or you can choose to destroy a landmark to give it +4/+2. Is also 3 mana for +2 health. Now, granted, the strength of that card is that it can destroy landmarks at burst speed. So, you know. Still, though, it's a decent comparison in my opinion. But I really like this card. This seems like a card that will blow out combats a lot. Like you attack in with 1 or even 2 units, your opponent gets some blocks, and you're like, okay, I'll use We Stand Together and just get a crazy good combat win and get like a 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 even. It's such a good trick in my opinion. And of course, it activates FATED. That's another reason. That's another thing that Riot was probably trying to show off by grouping it with FATED cards. But I think it can go outside of FATED. Now, the only problem with this card, and the only reason I can see it not seeing play, is the 2 mana combat tricks might just be better to play. You know, things like Hail Cascade, Sharp Sight. I'd rather play Troll Chant than this, in all honesty. Twin Disciplines. So, yeah. But even if you don't have 2 units in combat, you can just say, like, let's say you have 2 units, one's injured, one's not. You send the uninjured one into combat, your opponent blocks. You play We Stand Together, buffing the one in combat, so, you know, it wins combat, and then buffing the one that was injured that's out of combat. You just healed your uninjured unit and won combat. That's a pretty good trade. Not a game-winning, like, value play, but just a nice little value play. Is that worth a card slot, though, in your deck? I'm not sure. I like this card, though, but granted, I like these kind of combat tricks. The card it actually reminds me of is, I think it's called Back to Back, the 6 mana Demacia spell that says 6 mana, give 2 units +3/+3 at burst speed. That card, a lot of people don't remember, used to be better. They had to nerf that card. It was so good. I honestly think they could unnerf it now. The meta's just that much, the cards are just that much better. But that card, Back to Back, used to be 5 mana, and every Demacia deck played it. Now, this is in a world before things like Sharp Sight, so of course, like, people were starved for combat tricks back then. So, yeah, I like it. I like this card a lot. I like every single card here. Big fan of all of them. I can't wait to play Targon. I'm pretty sure Fated will not work with support because support doesn't target. However, I assume Tarek, the copied spell Tarek creates and casts on whatever he supports, will count for Fated. So Pantheon, Tarek, mid-range-ish support. You know, you play like all these like Fated cards, you play Pantheon, you play Tarek. and then you play like some rallies like Golden Aegises to get the Golden Aegis Taric combo going, which is a pretty powerful combo, which we see a little bit on the fringes as like a Poppy Taric deck. I could see that happening. Anyway, though, that's going to be it for this. Only like I said, not that many cards, but new mechanic. So we a little bit longer video than the other few ones, I believe, the past few, because I wanted to talk about the mechanic because it's pretty cool. Not very like unique, I'll admit. Other card games have had mechanics like this, but it's one of my favorite mechanics from other card games, so I'm really happy to see it here in Legends of Runeterra. While I'm not a big mid-range player, I do like this kind of mid-range, like the whole lots of combat tricks and self-buff things back when it was viable. I loved playing a lot of Fiora Shen. I still try to play like things like Fiora Shen or Shen Poppy, but those decks just aren't good enough against the value generation Vandal City has. Anyway, though, that's going to be it for today's video. I'd love to hear what you guys think about Fated and these cards. You can always, if you want to share your thoughts, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear what kind of decks you think these can go in already, and what your ideas of what maybe Pantheon can do in the future. Also, if you just enjoyed the video in general, I'd love it if you could leave a like or a comment down below. Always helps me out and all that. You know how it is. And if you guys want to keep up with the Legends of Runeterra content, you can always go and subscribe to the channel. And if you guys want to watch me play some Legends of Runeterra, you can go and check me out over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Zeneton, where I stream pretty much every single day. Anyway, though, with that all said and done, thank you all once more for watching this video. And until I see you guys in the next one, bye!